Good morning, I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Tyler Kelly.
And welcome you to Mornings with Brian and Tyler. Today we move into the book of Nehemiah, continuing the process of the rebuilding of the wall, the temple, and the city of Jerusalem. And we're going to be in chapter 2, verses 17 through 20. Tyler?
Then I said to them, "You see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, "Let us rise up and build." And they set their hands to this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us and said, "What is this thing that you are doing? Will you rebel against the king?" So I answered them and said to them, "The God of heaven himself will prosper us. Therefore we, his servants, will rise and build, but you have no heritage or right or memorial in Jerusalem."
Okay. So right before that, he had taken and ridden around the city. He had inspected the situation. And keep in mind, faith is not, quote, blind, okay? Faith has to have a couple things. Number one, you need a word from God, okay? Number two, you need to know what's going on with what you have, so that what you speak in faith, what you pray in faith, actually pertains to your situation. I've never asked someone, Tyler, would you please pray for me that I would have enough faith to get in my truck and drive my truck to my house from the church building. I don't need to be in faith over that. Okay? If my truck works, if I know how to drive, it's no. And I've never asked anybody, please pray for me that I might believe enough that I could put my key in the ignition to start my truck to drive home. No. But that's how some people look at faith. What we have here is, what situation is the city in? He needs to know what he needs to do. Once he knows what he needs to do, there's been a command already issued from the king. The king was in obedience to the Lord. The principle of God's will is already in motion. There's no need to learn what the will of God is here. The need is to step in line with the will of God so that God can bless them. And that's what his point is with this thing. He says, look, the city's in a bad way. It's time we get back on track with God's plan and rebuild it. And who comes up? But people who've been there for a while, and they tell them, you can't do this without our permission. You're a bad guy. You're against the king, blah, 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 blah. He says, look, it's going to happen. Our God is with us. It's our God's will. This is where we start to see faith. Everything he's looking at says nothing is going to work. Everyone who's talking says this will not work. He says, I don't really care. Me knowing what the situation is, me knowing what God's will is, says I can achieve and do this. And so when you start to look at how to operate in faith, Nehemiah is a great book all the way from front to start, from start to stop. So, some other thoughts, my brother?
No, sir.
All right. With that, I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Tyler Kelly.
We bid you good morning.